Today we're going to talk about the 2-5-1. The 2-5-1 is probably the most common chord progression found in jazz. But today I want to show you how you can add this chord progression into a 12-bar blues to add some jazz flavor into your blues playing. So first of all, what is a 2-5-1? Well, it all stems from the major scale. So if we look at a C major scale, we can build a chord from every note of that scale using just the notes in the scale. And we get this cycle of chords called the diatonic chords of C major, which is C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor 7, B half diminished, and finally back to C major 7. So when we talk about the 2-5-1, we're taking the second chord from that series of chords, D minor, the fifth chord, G7, and then back to C major. So we can use this chord progression in a blues in the key of G to get from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. And if you look at the chart I've got on the screen, you can see where that fits in bar 4 of our blues. We're going from G7 to C7, and we're putting that D minor 7, G7 in there, and then resolving to C7. So there's a lot of things we can play over this progression. The most obvious thing is to play chord tones, and we can find all those chord tones by going through our arpeggio shapes. So if we look at a D minor 7th arpeggio, a G dominant 7th arpeggio, and a C7 arpeggio, we get something like this. G7, and then C7. So now we can weave those chord tones together to create lines. So in this example, I'm just playing straight out of the arpeggio shapes. So in that example, I went straight up a D minor 7th arpeggio with the root, flat 3rd, 5th, and flat 7th. And then from there, I'm looking for the chord tones from G7. So I'm literally seeing these chord forms. And I can see right there from this flat 7th of D minor, a half step away, I have the 3rd of my G7. So then I can just come down 3rd, root, flat 7, 5th of G minor, and then up a whole step to the 3rd of my C7. So another approach we can take is to alter the G7 chord. One way I like to do this is to build a diminished arpeggio off the 3rd of the chord. So in the key of G, that would be from B, the major 3rd of the G7 chord. We can go up a series of minor 3rds to D, F, and then A flat, and we get this diminished arpeggio, which if we look at those notes as they relate to G7, we get the 3rd, the 5th, the flat 7th, and the flat 9. So we're introducing that flat 9 altered note to our 5 chord to build a little tension. Now if we tie that in with the previous example, we can play up our D minor 7th arpeggio and then switch over to that, what would be like a B diminished arpeggio, and then resolve to G, which is the 5th of our C chord. So that example sounds like this. Okay, so in this next example, we're going to add another arpeggio, but this time over the D minor 7th chord. So instead of playing a D minor 7th arpeggio, what we can do is play an arpeggio out of the relative major. In this case, it would be F major 7. So an easy way to find the relative major or relative minor is to just go up or down 3 frets. So if we go up 3 frets from D, We have F, and there's our relative major. If we go down 3 frets from F major, we have D, and there's a relative minor. So when we play the notes of an F major 7th arpeggio, we get E, F, A, and C. And that gives us the sound of a D minor 9 chord, which is a really nice sound for our 2 chord, and then G7, and then C7. So in this example, instead of playing a D minor 7th arpeggio, I'm going to play an F major 7th arpeggio and then tie that into our diminished line from the previous example. Okay, so in this last example, we're going to further alter our G7 chord. So the notes we can use to alter our G7 chord are the flat 5, the sharp 5, the flat 9, or the sharp 9. And we can add those notes over the root 3rd and flat 7th of our dominant chord to create different altered dominant chords. All these notes combined together create what's called the altered scale, which in the key of G sounds like this. So there we have the root, the flat 9, the sharp 9, the 3rd, the flat 5th, the sharp 5th, the flat 7th, and then the root again. So in this next example, I'm going to play our F major 7th arpeggio from the previous example, and then I'm going to tie that into some notes of the altered scale. So in that example, I went up the F major arpeggio, and then I just simply went down the altered scale, and I played the sharp 9, flat 9, root, and flat 7th, and then resolved to the 3rd of my C major chord. So there's a few basic examples of some lines you can play over a 2-5-1 and how you can start adding those into your blues playing to go from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. At the beginning of the video, I played a solo using a few of those examples. I'll have the tab for that solo as well as a few more 2-5-1 examples available on my Patreon. So if you feel like it, come join me over there for some more lesson content. But I really appreciate everybody taking the time to watch this video, and let me know in the comments if this was helpful. And I'm looking forward to making more of these. So thank you for watching. Take care.